The 2024 season for the Oregon Ducks was full of really exciting things, but I think a lot of people are disappointed with how it ended. Perfect regular season and a Big Ten championship was kind of ruined with their game in the college football playoff. Dan Lanning's squad is looking to avenge that loss, and they are looking to get back to the playoff this year, and they have the right pieces in place to make that happen. We take a deep dive into the Oregon Ducks and look at what we should expect from this team this season. Now, last year was a very interesting year for Oregon. We all knew that Dan Lanning had the ability to take this team to another level, and he did with that undefeated season and a Big Ten championship. You just got smoked by Ohio State, and now everybody feels like they're almost questioning whether or not it was a good season. It was a good season. You just ran into the national championship. That was a tough game to lose, and you can bet that they're motivated to be a better team in 2025. Now, I think that you have a number of changes that will make their life a little bit easier, but there's also some things that happened in the offseason that we obviously need to talk about that affect this team. Now, losing certain players, specifically at wide receiver, Tez Johnson is gone. Obviously, Trayshawn Holden's gone. You also lost some good tackles in Josh Connerly and a Johnny Cornelius at those tackle positions that make you have to find new players. You brought in two guys in Isaiah World and Alex Harkey that will take those spots, but we'll see what that means in terms of production. And we'll obviously dive into the offensive line in a little bit. Also, you lose Dillon Gabriel. You knew that he was going to go to the NFL. It was his last year in college, so you knew that a new quarterback would be taking over. You also lose Jordan James to the NFL and tight end Terrence Ferguson. Defensively, you lose a number of key pieces. Jordan Birch, Jamari Caldwell, and Derek Harmon all go to the NFL on the defensive line. Jeffrey Bassa, Kobe Savage, Jabbar Muhammad. You knew that those guys were potentially all going to be gone at the end of the year. So now you have a little bit of I don't want to call it a rebuild because this is a team that reloads. They don't rebuild. That's going to be really interesting. We'll talk about the injury that affects the wide receiver position as well, but you have a number of players that also came in from the transfer portal. You bring in a guy like Jamari Johnson at tight end. That could be an interesting player to watch. He's going to be the backup, but he is someone that has the potential to be really exciting. You bring in some players on the offensive line. We talked about Isaiah World, Alex Harkey. Those are guys that will step in and contribute right away. On defense, you didn't bring in a ton, and this is where Oregon's kind of in that luxury position where you bring in quality over quantity. You bring in Bear Alexander. We'll dive into his arrival and what needs to happen for him. You also bring in Dylan Thieneman, Theron Johnson from the Big Ten. Thieneman comes in from Purdue. Johnson comes in from Northwestern to contribute in your secondary. This is still a really exciting team. I don't have any reason why this won't be a team that competes for a Big Ten championship once again. The Big Ten at the top is basically just down to 4 teams. It feels like that's just how it's going to be year in and year out, and Oregon is one of those teams. A lot of that is going to be determined by what the quarterback position does, and Dante Moore learned a ton last year. Now, 2 years ago, we saw him at UCLA. It was kind of surprising that he went to UCLA over staying with Oregon, but ultimately he still ends up with the Ducks. We saw some potential in his game, but there was also some concern that some of his performances were rough. You look at the Utah game specifically, that's a game that could have broken a lot of quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks would have struggled with that kind of production and the turnovers that he forced. I think that a lot of guys would have regressed in their development, but he ultimately decides that he needed a change. He goes to the right program, I think, coming back to Oregon, and now he gets a chance to show what he learned last year. Watching Dillon Gabriel is an educational experience for anybody behind him. Dante Moore is someone that learned a ton. Now, he was battling and probably still will battle with Austin Novosad in the fall, but he is someone that I think has the ability to get the hype back of what we thought he was going to be at UCLA. Dillon Gabriel gives him a lot of education, a lot of things to know about playing quarterback in college football, and a lot of knowledge that you just don't get from experience. Dillon Gabriel has had multiple stops at UCF, Oklahoma, and now Oregon, he is someone that is a wealth of knowledge that Dante Moore learned from. That's a part of his game that I think if Dante Moore explodes right away, it's going to be because he learned so many things from Dillon Gabriel, where he knows how to make smarter decisions. He knows how to make certain reads better. And then you combine that with his natural talent, you have a guy who is in a great position to be successful in 2025 and beyond. And Oregon's offense kind of hinges on him being that guy. Now, Will Stein is going to be a really good play caller. We've seen what he's capable of doing as a play caller. He's going to put Dante Moore in successful positions. And that's honestly terrifying for any team that has to play them. Now, keeping Austin Novosad was probably the biggest surprise. I think a lot of people just assumed that if he didn't win the job, he would go in the transfer portal. And maybe it was Oregon saying, no, you have a chance at the job. And maybe he does. We obviously don't know what this coaching staff is thinking or telling these guys, but he is a nice backup to have. He is a talented player who also learned from Dillon Gabriel. So these are two guys with tremendous potential, tremendous talent, and both of them are going to have opportunities to show that they can be the guy. It just feels like Dante Moore is going to be that starter right off the bat. The running back position, losing Jordan James, honestly, Jordan James was super underrated in my opinion. I don't think a lot of people talked about Jordan James and his abilities. Was he the best running back in college football by any means? No, but he was a lot better than people gave him credit for. He's gone. You bring back Noah Whittington. You bring back a number of guys that are going to be depth pieces as well. Jalen Limar and Dewan Briggs. Those are guys that are going to be solid contributors, but you felt like you were missing a piece that needed to be that go-to guy. Fortunately for them, Mekhi Hughes hits the transfer portal after a big year at Tulane, and he gives them a big frame. I think that he is a guy who's going to be very physical running the football and someone who is ready to step into this offense and be a stud right off the bat. He is someone who had a big year last year for Tulane. He was a big reason for their success, a big reason why they made it to the conference championship. And he's a great replacement. And the staff's really excited about what he can do for this offense. He gives Dante Moore kind of some peace of mind, knowing that the rushing attack will be good once again. And this is a rushing attack that still can take a step forward. It wasn't the best rushing attack by any means in Oregon standards, but Mekhi Hughes does take that to another level. He should have the ability to make this group tremendously better, purely based off of his ability, but also his physicality. And that's going to help because the wide receivers kind of are uncertain. Losing Evan Stewart, I think, was always going to hurt regardless of how long he's out. Now, we don't know how long he's going to be out after it was reported that he tore his patellar tendon. He could be out the entire year. He could be out a few months and he comes back middle of the season, late season. We don't know. We also don't know if he's going to be back on 100%. So you kind of turn the page on him and you kind of look towards who are these guys that are going to step up in a big way. Now, everybody's talking about DeCorian Moore. I think everyone expects him to be the next freshman phenom that steps in right away and is a major contributor. There's still a lot that he has to learn, but everything that has been reported is basically saying that he is ready for his time in the spotlight. But they do need someone else to step up too. Last year, you had a number of players that were the go-to guys for Dillon Gabriel, and someone needs to be that for Dante Moore. Maybe DeCorian Moore is that guy. Other players to keep an eye on, Kyler Casper is someone that could step in and replace Stewart. Same with Jurian Dickey. Jurian Dickey has a great frame that is ready for Big Ten play. I think that he is ready to step up. Gary Bryant Jr. comes back. He will be a contributor, whether it's the starter next to Moore or he's going to start over Moore. We'll see. Other guys to keep an eye on, Justice Lowe is someone that has been ready for his opportunity. Jeremiah McClellan is a former Ohio State transfer who came to Oregon. Cooper Perry's been making a name for himself. And then you do have Malik Benson, another guy who is looking to kind of repair his image. Things didn't go well at Alabama. Things did not go well at Florida State. He is looking to show that he can be the big time player. I think he has the abilities, but it maybe is the mental side of things where he has to overcome certain difficulties, certain obstacles. Those are a number of players that could step up. And then if they find their footing and Evan Stewart comes back, that only makes them better. Now, a guy who's probably going to step up in Stewart's absence while the wide receivers get things sorted out is one of the best players in college football. Kenyon Sadiq is an absolute freak athletically. He is someone that is ready to take on a bigger role in this offense, especially after being behind Terrence Ferguson. He caught 24 passes last year, 308 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You look at what he did in the Big Ten championship game, that's kind of what people expect from him. That's the kind of production that he's capable of producing. He is someone that has all the ability in the world. He has a bright future in the NFL, and he is someone that Oregon fans are infatuated with. If you do not talk about Kenyon Sadiq when you're talking about Oregon, you're kind of missing the point. And even though I think you do kind of get sick of hearing certain names over and over again, and maybe Kenyon Sadiq is in that realm where you're like, well, we've just talked about him so much that we don't feel like we need to talk about it anymore. You will never not talk about Sadiq enough. You will never not talk about him enough times. He is that good. He's worth talking about that much. And he is someone that is going to be a big time player for this team and take on a bigger role than he did last year. Now you bring in Jamari Johnson behind him from Louisville. He is someone that could play a big role as well. Someone who could step up and give them opportunities to use 2 tight end sets if they need it. I think that he's going to be really exciting. You also have certain players behind them that don't have a ton of production, but you do have solid depth. You feel like they're in a good place, and guys that could be physical run blockers that open things up for Mekhi Hughes and that rushing attack. That's probably the biggest question for a team that is going through a bit of a transition at multiple positions in the passing attack. A group that finished 13th last year is probably going to take a step back. You have a new quarterback. You lost one of your top receivers. You have a freshman that could be one of your top guys. It just might take some time for them to get things sorted out. Fortunately for them, everything up front should be in good hands. Now, a lot of that hinges on Isaiah World and Alex Harkey being exactly what Oregon's coaching staff thinks they're going to be. And a lot of analysts think that they're ready to be potential NFL draft picks, but we'll hold off on that for now. Isaiah World comes in from Nevada, a team that was a tough group to beat, but struggled at times as well. Alex Harkey is coming in from Texas State. Playing in the Big Ten is vastly different than playing in the Mountain West and the Sun Belt. That being said, I think a lot of people assume that they're ready to go, and everything that we've seen is that they're the starters. There really isn't much competition behind them, even if there's good depth. Those are your 2 starters at tackle, and that's huge, especially when you lose Cornelius and Connerly. You need guys to step up and take their game to that next level, and they feel like they have good guys to do that. World is also a freak in terms of a frame, so he is someone that could be a really fun player to watch if everything clicks for him. You also bring in Emmanuel Perignon from USC to be one of your starters at guard. Dave Iuli is a good depth piece at that position. He could also be a center for them as well. Now you look at the center position that they have coming back. Iapani Lalaulu is going to be a really fun player, a guy that a lot of people probably don't know, because you bring in 2 new tackles that everybody's really excited about. You bring in a new transfer at guard, and you have a former transfer in Matthew Bedford at the other guard position that people are excited to see. This is a guy that probably doesn't get enough love, though, at center. And you're going to learn really quick how good he is. And he is a good piece to have back for a new quarterback. He worked with Dylan Gabriel all year. He is someone that has the knowledge and the ability to make Dante Moore better and see things in a different way. So even though Dylan Gabriel won't be there, you have a center who's going to remind you, hey, when they give you this look, this is what they're doing. If you see this pressure, they're probably going to either do this or drop off into this, which means the coverage is this. I think this is a smart guy who is ready to take a step in his own regard. But even if he's not going to get the attention he deserves, he's going to make an impact on this offense that makes them even better and gives Dante Moore the best option or the best scenario, the best position to be successful. That's going to be really exciting. And the offensive line is ready to make sure that this team is once again a contender in the Big Ten. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line is ready. I think that they are excited despite the number of players that you lose. You lose Jordan Burch, you lose Derek Harmon, you lose Jamari Caldwell. You lost a number of big time players that would probably hurt a lot of programs. But again, when you are Dan Lanning and you're the Oregon Ducks, you've done a good job of recruiting where you just replenish the talent you have and you find players that you can add via the transfer portal that fill some holes maybe if you feel like you need them. Now, Mateo Uiagalelei is going to have to take a step forward. This is his second team all Big Ten selection last year, but he has another gear to him. And that's coming off a year which he had 38 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 10.5 sacks. I think he can play to a different level, and I think that he is ready to take another step. Now, teams know what he's capable of, so maybe you're not going to see him be as productive, but he's still going to have an impact because he's going to command extra attention, extra blockers. Maybe a running back has to chip him. Behind him is where there's plenty of depth. Elijah Rushing is someone who's ready to play a bigger role and be part of a rotation if they need. Matthew Johnson will also push to be part of that rotation as well. On the interior, and this is a defense that's going to have a bunch of different edge rushers. We'll talk about the jack position here in a little bit. That could be included in the defensive line, but you can also put them in the linebacker. I'm not going to really debate that. Defensive line in the interior, Bear Alexander is the name we'll talk about here in a second, but Amari Washington is someone I think is ready to also take a step. 10 tackles last year, 2 tackles for loss. He is ready for his moment. And when you're sitting behind Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell, I think that you're feeling like, oh, well, when am I going to get my chance? You get a chance to learn from those guys. And that's a position that I think doesn't get talked about enough with Oregon. The veterans they have can pass down a wealth of knowledge to these younger guys. And now these guys can take that and now apply it to the field. You also have Terrence Green that could be part of that. Aiden Breland, Tiona Gray, Derek Johnson. Those are guys that will be part of the rotation push for playing time. The biggest X factor of this defense is Bear Alexander. Bear Alexander was at Georgia, goes to USC, comes to Oregon. You're hoping that he puts it all together because honestly, Bear Alexander at his peak is capable of being a monster and capable of ruining offensive game plans. The problem is that there has to be this expectation that he buys in. And we've already seen it from different pieces of content that Dan Lanning didn't need Bear Alexander. He didn't need to bring him in, and he had the option to sit down and say, I don't need you, but if you want to come here and you're going to invest in our program, then we'll take you. And one of the things that's really nice about this position is that if Bear Alexander decides, I don't want to buy in, they don't have any problem sitting him on the bench and putting someone else in that is just going to do the job better or they're as talented as him. But he is by far the guy that is going to dictate how successful this defensive line is. If he's bought in and he plays to his potential, this group is going to be really exciting. If not, you just move on to someone younger and maybe there's a little bit of a growing pain, but there's also plenty of talent that can get that production if Bear Alexander isn't going to be that guy. So that's a name that everybody's obviously going to keep an eye on and someone who has the potential to make a big time impact on this team one way or another. Now the linebackers are going to fly under the radar in terms of recognition, but you have plenty of options that are going to be worth noting. You look at we'll start with the jack position. Tatum Tuioti is going to be a big time player for this defense. And last year he had 58 tackles. He had 8 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. He is someone that on the edge is going to be basically just another defensive lineman, but I'm excited to see how they move him around and utilize him. Behind him, Ashton Porter and Blake Purchase are really good depth pieces to have. Those are guys that are just chomping at the bit to get more time, and they are ready to show that they can play. Now, Purchase and Porter will also play at one of the linebacker positions. It's just going to depend on what kind of look the defense gives, what kind of look that your coaching staff wants to present. Tosh Lupoy has plenty of options at linebacker, so I'm curious to see what they'll do. You also bring back Bryce Betcher. He is someone who had a big year, 94 tackles, 8 tackles for loss. He is a veteran that is going to have a big time impact on this defense from a production standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint. Devin Jackson is an interesting player coming back at the money position. I think the fact that they have Mack and Money as two of the positions, those are really fun if you're a player that wants to play something different than just your traditional linebacker. But those are guys that are ready to make a big impact. And again, Blake Purchase, Ashton Porter will be part of that as well. Jerry Mixon could be part of the mix. And after that, you're having a bunch of different guys showing that they can step up and be rotational players as well. The linebackers, we'll see what the defensive line does, but the linebackers may have to make some more plays while the defensive line gets acclimated to each other and their new roles. The Big Ten is tough. It's physical. And some of these guys are going to have to learn that this is going to be physical for the entire game. And some of these guys maybe don't have the conditioning that they're used to, but that will come in time. And the linebackers are in a good place where they have a ton of returning talent, a ton of returning experience, where they can make that happen and they can be a solid unit. The secondary goes through quite a bit of change as well. Like I said, you bring in Dylan Thieneman and Theron Johnson to potentially start for you. Thieneman feels like a lock at this point. Next to him, either Kingston Lopa or Peyton Woodyard are going to be two of those guys that play big roles and will rotate in as well. Aaron Flowers behind Thieneman is a good player to have. You can also maybe put Lopa at free safety if you're going to have to see Thieneman sit out. So you have options in terms of depth. The cornerback position, we talked about Theron Johnson. He's going to be battling for one of those spots. It's not a guarantee that he'll start, but he is someone that will be a fun player to watch. The success he had at Northwestern was one of the few bright spots for this team. It was a team that had a lot of struggles, but Theron Johnson was a big reason why you were maybe excited to watch Northwestern's defense if you're a sicko just like that. Jalil Florence takes on another bigger role this year. I think that he's going to be really fun to watch. Someone who's ready to show that he can be an absolute force for this secondary and someone who is ready to make some big plays opposite of whoever starts at that other cornerback position. But you have good depth behind them. The nickel position will be interesting. Dalen Austin and Jaden Kennedy, who comes in to potentially be a big-time player. Naeem Offord is another guy that could step in at either safety, at nickel. We'll see where they play him. But this is a defense that was really good against the pass last year. Part of that had to do with the guys up front. Part of that had to do with the secondary. You have multiple new faces that are stepping up in a big way for this defense, and maybe that means they need some time to sort things out, but you feel pretty good about the amount of time that they're going to have to get that sorted out because the schedule is interesting. The schedule gives you opportunities to kind of, I don't want to say coast into the season, but ease into the season right off the bat. Now, you do get Montana State. Montana State is a tough FCS team. The problem is that they're an FCS team in Oregon. There are levels to this. Oregon shouldn't have any problem with that. You also host Oklahoma State. Now, in years past, Oklahoma State might have been more of a problem than you might have realized, but they're a team that is going through a tough time, and Mike Gundy's job is on the line. You then go to Northwestern, a team that is not as good as Oregon, but going to Northwestern for whatever reason is just always a different experience. It's always a tougher place to play, even when they have a regular stadium, not with their temporary one. You get this feels wrong. The rivalry game against Oregon State this early in the season just doesn't feel right. It feels like this is just also part of college football, but that's just wrong. You shouldn't have that game this early in the season, but it is early in the season. Oregon State should be a win. So you should be 4-0 going into the Penn State game, and it's a road trip against Penn State. That's a rematch of the Big Ten championship game. It's a Penn State team that is looking to make a college football playoff run and looking to win the Big Ten. That is a big game, and that's where Dante Moore really needs to be ready. That's where the depth pieces or the new starters need to be familiar with their role and comfortable with what they're doing. That is going to be a tough one. After that, though, you get a bye week to kind of recuperate and see what went right, what went wrong, fix certain things, and we'll see what it looks like at that point. Indiana is another playoff team, but it feels like they're going to take a step back, but I don't know what they're going to be. We'll find out quickly how much Indiana has to do in terms of work and how well they can compete against Oregon, but that's a game that's definitely winnable. Same with a road trip to Rutgers, which is just honestly ridiculous to have Rutgers and Oregon in the same conference, but here we are. Then you get Wisconsin at home. You get a bye week before you go to Iowa. That's another tough place to play. That could be a sneaky tough game for Oregon. Just ask any of the bigger teams that have gone into Iowa and have struggled mightily. Hosting Minnesota could be a tough game depending on what the Golden Gophers look like. USC, if they're better, will be tough. And then Washington, a rivalry game at the end of the season. So we don't get Oregon State, but we do get a road trip to Washington. So I don't know. It doesn't feel right still, but it is what it is at this point. And this is a tougher schedule towards the end, but you do have that Penn State game at the end of September. That's going to be a tough one. That'll kind of show us where Oregon is and either how much better they are than we expect or maybe how much work they have to do. Still, though, honestly, I think the ceiling is still 12-0. I think that Oregon expects to be an undefeated team. They can still win. You don't have to play Ohio State. You do have to play Penn State, but all of those games are winnable games. Now, the floor is really the bigger question. You're not losing to Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, or Oregon State. Penn State is a losable game. The only other game that I would see as a potential loss is Washington, just because that's a rivalry game. And if things aren't going well with Oregon and they have some struggles, Washington's a team that could surprise people this year. I don't know. I feel like a safe floor would be 9-3, 10-2. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. I mean, right now, 82% of you thinking they're finished first through third, which is not surprising. The rest of you think 4th through 8th. Nobody thinks that they're going to step below that. And when I think that the 4th through 8th, people probably mean 4th. I don't think there's a lot of people that think they're going to finish 5th or worse. That would be a major regression, and I don't think Oregon has a major regression in them. But this is still going to be a fun year. This is a year that we'll probably see them get back in the college football playoff. We're really excited to see what Dante Moore can do, and we're really excited to see a team that has a sour taste in their mouth, a chip on their shoulder. How do they bounce back, and how do they ensure that this year ends up much different than last year?